Hello, everyone's Forest Focus, something different today as we look at the debate around moving away from the City Ground. Fans made their views clear on Saturday during the game against Chelsea, but I wanted to hear what supporters of other clubs make of moving. Is it really that bad? Do you get used to it? What makes a new stadium work and what makes them fail? With that in mind, I spoke to fans of Spurs, West Ham and Everton to get their take on what's happened or is going to happen to their clubs. First, I spoke with Spurs fan Baker, who you might remember from a previous opposition preview episode, to hear about what he thinks of the Tottenham Stadium. Then we hear from Mark Carlaw, host of the West Ham Way fan channel, and finally Everton fan Ped of Toffee TV, another previous podcast guest. I tried to ask them basically the same questions to see if there's any correlation, and we'll come back to that at the end, as I think there are some interesting conclusions from all three. But first up, here's Baker on Spurs.
I mean, it's not the same. That's the straight away point. You feel like you lose your home, definitely. Is you lose some character. Effectively, isn't it? It's like going from a lovely country cottage into a brand new, new build type stuff. You're going to lose some character with it. I definitely don't regret it. You will always miss because we associate football's a game of memories, isn't it? So you associate so many things to some magical nights. Is when I think of the massively thinking of like the sort of first Champions League game. We went to the Inter Milan with Bale destroying Maicon, and they gave everyone the flags and waved the flags and all that stuff, and it was a real tight in ground, and you definitely feel in your current ground you make a difference more so, as you move into a bigger ground and so forth. Like grounds nowadays, and certainly our ground is much more of an entertainment venue than it is necessarily a football stadium. I can sort of tell that by the fact of like when people ask me for tickets, most of the time people that ask me for tickets aren't Tottenham fans. Well, that never happened in the old stadium, but it happens plenty in this one because it's great fun, the stadium. But it definitely feels like it definitely feels like you lose some of your soul. You lose some of the fan influence necessarily on the pitch. I think is we can make lots more, like your tifo like displays and all of the light shows and all that stuff. But in terms of getting sort of behind the team or making certain things, I don't feel that during the game. Strangely, you feel it after the game more than during the game. So like when we win, I feel like the stadium rocks a lot louder than it used to. But I think that's partly because of the venue in Tottenham. So people aren't realising 2 hours before the game, the stadium is open and it is rammed. Like, I think probably around 2/3 of people that are going on a match day are in the stadium 2 hours before the game. And the same percentage are there well an hour after the game as well. It becomes a whole big day out because there's incredible food. There's like bands and stuff like at Tottenham, like in the concourses and so forth. So that whole thing it's a completely different experience, but it does encourage people to be in early. It does encourage people to stay, so you don't have so many people that whereas previously you'd be like, I'm going to leave 10 minutes early to get the train. You'd see all those type of things because Tottenham's not the easiest place to get out of. Now you go, well, I'll stay an hour later. Everyone's much more inclined to be around for a longer time. So it's better in terms of, and that obviously is just revenue. And you just can't turn that down. So whether I like the fact that we lose some soul, whether I like the fact that it's, doesn't feel like you're making as much of a difference as a fan, you have to appreciate that we have financial fair play rules and it's percentage of turnover. It just, that in itself is just enough.
The whole matchday experience as well, isn't it? You sort of referenced it already, but at Forest now, you'll go to the pubs near the ground. You're putting money into local businesses as well. It sounds like you're not doing that now. It's a different matchday experience. Is it a better one or not?
Oh, it's definitely a better experience, the matchday experience. Yeah, but again, different. So like you say, going into that local pub, going into those places, and those places are still really busy. Don't get me wrong, because if you think about it, it's just basically like you've put two stadiums on top of each other. We've gone from 30,000 people to 60,000 people. So even if an extra 30,000 go in the stadium, you still got the same amount of people in the pub. So the pubs are still busy. Yeah, any of the surrounding pubs I go to, no issues at all. Like, and the food establishments, probably more so, like, do better than previously, I would say. So I don't think it's been a big negative for those places. If you like those places, you still will. But it's really cool to be in a stadium. Like the bar, we've got one bar which is like the longest bar in Europe or something like that, which is like the whole length of a stand. Before the game, especially it's a 3 o'clock, the 12:30 game of the Premier League will be on the telly, and there'll be tellies everywhere. But I have like a few thousand people all in around each other. It's just, it definitely helps with the idea of sort of optimism before the game, being involved in it. Like, it definitely doesn't make it worse.
It's another trade-off as well. Then it sounds like the new stadium is great for families by the sound of it, great for the tourist experience, which I know a lot of fans are against. Is there a trade-off against the kind of the hardcore fans that have been going for 40 years and always do? They're the ones leading the chants. Are they the ones that are kind of missing out the most, do you think?
Oh, 1,000,000%. Yeah, if you speak to anybody that doesn't like it, then what it also will then mean, away tickets are impossible to get. Literally, impossible to get, because that's almost like the retro side of the world. What you once had just goes to the aways. So what you'll find is those like you say, those sort of like hardcore fans and so forth, a lot of them now, the part that they relish more than anything is the away days, because it's their opportunity to still be that sort of select few people with all the loyalty points and all the rest that can still go. The noise is louder. I definitely hear it on the whenever we're on the telly, I can hear the away fans are louder, more vociferous in their support than I've ever heard them, and I think that's partly because that's their time.
With the new stadium, but also with the way the Premier League's going in general, do you feel more like a customer than a fan than ever before?
Oh, 1,000,000%. Like I say, I don't think I don't try to pretend anything differently for that. I think I was open in that sense. Is the stadium, the Tottenham Stadium is just a money making machine. That's that's what it's looking for. Is, if you think on sort of ticket prices alone, it's not enough. For people to say, hey, that's a tangible amount of money, really, compared to what the Premier League sort of things are. But they're looking to get you with the ticket prices, but they're looking to get you with, you're going to eat there, you're going to drink there, we're going to do multi-purpose other things that happen at the stadium, all the time. You do feel like you're putting a lot of money into the club's pockets, and I think if things aren't then going right when you move to the stadium, that's a really detrimental effect, because you want to see that money spent. So I think is what we saw recently. We've made a decision to increase prices. I think 5 or 6%, 6%. I think it was. We've announced our increase was. Now, we hadn't done an increase for a couple of seasons, but we have, and immediately people are straight into calculating what that is. Do we really need it? What do we do? But we're customers now. I definitely think new stadiums do move you away from that previous identity. I think they're all valid reasons, but you look at every club now is counting the FFP business. We might I think we'll always say, because of Chelsea and Man City and not having those issues, but we've seen it. You've seen it more than anybody else. Everton have seen it this season. Every single thing you can do to create more money will help your club have the ability to buy the players you want, pay the wages you want, to see the football that you wish to see. So it relies on us being customers now.
So just lastly then, if I could give you a time machine or something with 3 distinct choices then, you could either go back to White Hart Lane, and it is as it
Mm-hmm.
was, you could use Tottenham Stadium, or as you've got now, or you could Dual Grange, which is an option that Forest have been trying to pursue for years, which is a revamped City Ground, or White Hart Lane as would be, with say 40,000 capacity, better corporate facilities, but far from perfect. Which of the three scenarios, now knowing what you know, would you choose?
Thing is, right, the old stadium had like the best chicken balti pie the world's ever seen. We all talk about it. They've tried bringing a new, but it's not the same. So if I could go back, if we had the pie, then probably no. I would just stay. Honestly, I would do what we've done. I think it's the right move. I think is if we don't do it, others, like we've got that stadium in London now that's now attracting all of the venues, and we're doing that space, and because we did that, and we've come obviously kind of like third in terms of the state. So obviously West Ham and Arsenal had their new stadiums, we've had ours, but we've now got the one where people want to play. Like in terms of outside, we've got the one that the tourists want to go to, probably more than anybody else. If I'm a Forest fan, I'd be thinking exactly the same. Is we want to be the stadium that people want to go to, and not just because it's the historic City Ground. It's massive. Like I feel incredible pride when I see events that are not football being played at Tottenham. So when like the Anthony Joshua fight, when the Beyonce concerts and those things, it's weirdly cool that it's your football club they're playing at. It's weirdly cool. It gives you some pride. Like that's ours. When the NFL's there every year, like it's like, I mean that is beyond insane. Like you can't even imagine the demand. Even me, like trying to get a ticket for the NFL. I think I joined like 10 minutes before the queue started, and I was like 600,000th in line for a ticket. Like, and people are only going to that because it's an incredible venue. There's not a bad seat there. There's no issues. I genuinely, whereas previously in the old White Lane, there was like, I liked 3 blocks. In the whole of the stadium, I only liked 3 blocks. If I wasn't in that, I wasn't going. I'll go to any seat in Tottenham Stadium. Any single seat that's there, I have no issues with at all. So you lose those tiny, you can't replicate those blocks in those old stadiums, those certain blocks. But you can replicate the whole thing.
Grateful to Baker for his time there. Interesting conclusions around the kind of trade-offs you have to make as a fan at these new stadiums around atmosphere, fan experience, and whether you're a customer or a supporter. And we'll come on to that same sort of topic with the other gents shortly. Before that, though, a quick word for our sponsors, the Trent Navigation. Of course, if you're not heading to Burnley for the last day of the season, then you can get down the Nav to enjoy all the action from the final round of matches for the Premier League this season. They'll be showing whatever games are televised, and you can keep tabs on whatever happens at Turf Moor as the Reds look to secure their place in the Premier League for next season. If they haven't already, they have really, I'm sure. But do get down to Nav. Obviously, very grateful for their support all season. They've been wonderful to us, and it's great to see so many fans down there at the weekend before the Chelsea game. So, grateful to them. Do keep supporting them next season. We've seen the importance of local businesses around the City Ground as part of this debate we're having right now. So, moving on, we're going to hear from Mark about West Ham, the move to the London Stadium, very different to the Tottenham Stadium around the quality of the stadium. I think it's fair to say. And Mark also has some interesting conclusions. So, I'll see you on the other side of that before we look at Everton and see what we can tally around Forest and how it all shapes up with the debate around the future of the City Ground.
It was never a popular one, us moving stadium. I don't think ever moving stadiums a popular thing amongst fans. No one likes change. I think that's just a natural human instinct anyway. But we had a real big issue with our stadium in the fact that it's not really a football stadium. It's an athletics stadium. And then they've tried to sort of like chop and change it where they can to try their best to make it look more of a football stadium. And it's I'm used to it now. I'm getting better with it. I'm over it a little bit now, the whole move. But definitely to begin with, it was not. It wasn't great, and I can understand the anxiety amongst Nottingham Forest fans about possibly moving stadiums, because it's very hard. And Hart, especially when you think of the City ground, that's what you think of when you think of Forest. It's one of the first things you think of. So I can imagine there's a fair bit of anxiety, but I do also think there's a lot of positives as well. So it's not all doom and gloom. I think it's trying to get people on board with it, isn't it? And understand. I think you've got to understand what the project is and what the purpose of the move is. You know what I mean? Why are you actually moving? I think that's the key to it.
What have been the positives then? What do you like about it?
Well, I like the fact that we've been able to offer more season tickets to people. That's a big plus straight away. So I think we were about 35,000 at Upton Park before we moved. So now we're getting close to 30,000 more than that. So that's a huge increase. Also, the transport links are by far better, like unbelievably so. Like I used to really find it quite stressful getting to West Ham before when I was younger, and obviously before the move. So to find it quite difficult, especially getting away from the ground, was a nightmare. Whereas now we've got a lot of options and etc. It does really help. It's not. I mean, we're not near a station. We've got about a 15-20 minute walk, but I can swallow that. But and also it's enabled us to it's increased our revenue, with that. So it has helped the club grow. But there's always that side of you as a football fan that looks back and thinks, oh, I do miss our old home. I do miss it. It's never been quite the same. But life changes, doesn't it? You've got to move with the times. You can't just sit still forever. But yeah, I'm thinking about Forest actually, funnily enough, when I'm talking to you, because it reminds me of them what I went through when we moved, and I think of Forest and the City ground, and it's a good stadium, in terms of the atmosphere. It's well known for it. So obviously we've been there a couple of times now in recent years, and found it quite intense. So it's quite hard. I can imagine why there are a few Nottingham Forest fans, maybe yourself included, that are a little bit apprehensive, let's say, about moving.
Yeah, I mean, I would be. One of the plans on the table, it's not like stay and leave it as it is or move. The original plan was to revamp the City ground to about 40,000 capacity. I don't know if you could ever have done that with Upton Park and make it more what you want it to be. If that was possible, would that have been the best solution for you, do you think?
Yeah, that's what I always wanted. We had a really strange stadium where we had a big west stand, a very small east stand, very much like, it was built in the mid-80s. And then we had the two other, so we had basically three big stands, modern stands, and the other one on the side that was tiny. So I've always said, like, why don't they just reconfigure things, maybe buy some land around it and try and build this next stand? But I think West Ham went down the cheap option and thought, well, we could do all that, spend all this money, or we could just go and rent a stadium across over there, which has got 60,000 seats. I think that's what they went for in the end. So it was heartbreaking. Yes, in answer to your question, yeah, if that would have been the opportunity to do that, I'd have much rather us have done that, because it would have been a football stadium and still our home. But that's not to say it's all negative, as I say. I really don't want to sort of paint a picture that it's all been doom and gloom. It really hasn't been. I do think it's opened up a few doors for us. But yeah, there are times when you think, you do look back and think, you miss your old home, you do miss it. But what can you do? It's gone, and we have to accept it. It's just the way it is.
How does the Matchday experience compare to the Olympic Park? And I know you've got the huge shopping centre on the way, but is it a much more sanitised Matchday experience than when you were going to Upton Park?
Yeah, it's certainly different. It's a completely new experience for us. I mean, because we've been there now a few years. The pubs, where you like to go, the ways to walk, etc. Where you meet certain people. So it's starting to feel like home now. But when I think back to Upton Park, it was a different Matchday experience, definitely, because it was quite tight, and if it was all around it, because it was all in a housing estate, like old football grounds are, like this sort of like in the middle of it. There it is, just it seems to be stuck in the middle of it. It felt very congested, but I quite liked that. I was used to that. Whereas this is very open, it's very big. You're walking along, and there's a lot of space around you, so it feels very different. I don't mind it. But there are times when I miss the old football. I miss the smell of the burgers. You know what I mean? I miss everything being really tight, and you had to bump into everyone, and it was all. I miss that in a way. Yeah, definitely. The actual match day experience. One thing I would say it's definitely improved. Now, I haven't actually been to City Ground for a little while, but I don't know what the toilet facilities, etc., things like that are like.
Not good.
Not good, yeah. I mean, which is quite common for most football grounds, especially the old school grounds. Whereas ours is a lot better now. I find that I actually really enjoy that. So, well, not enjoy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
It's a lot nicer. It does make a big difference actually. Because I didn't like that when I was like that. And I suppose because you're used to it, like yourself probably included, that you just become so used to going to City Ground, you're used to this experience. So when you actually go to somewhere new, it is nice to go out, and there's a lot of options in terms of food and etc. and bars and things like that. It's just the modern way, but you know that feeling of I don't know, corporate. It's not quite football anymore. You're walking around. We've got popcorn being sold, and we've got sweets and things, and all these sort of sweet stands. And you're looking around thinking this isn't really how I associated football. But then at the same time, as this is happening, I'm watching young kids in West Ham tops run up and buy their sweets and go for the games and all excited. So you're thinking, well, maybe am I just too old? Am I set in my ways? And really, I need to sort of stop being so have too much tunnel vision. Actually, start thinking of the bigger picture. And it is what it is, isn't it? I mean, as I've said before, as I started, I think it's just a feeling of change is the big thing when it comes to. And it's not comfortable. A lot of people find it a bit uncomfortable.
Just specifically with West Ham as well. Like I've been to your ground, and if it was a proper, sounds like the wrong word, but a stadium that was built for football, and it was probably what you would have wanted as a fan from the start, would West Ham fans have been more receptive when you did move into it, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Because what they did was the club. Now, I don't know what the board of Forest are promising the fans. I'm not sure whether they have yet or done. Well, you can obviously let me know. But the West Ham board effectively promised us European football. That's how they spun it and said, well, look, we're never going to be able to compete with the likes of Arsenal and Chelsea, talking about our London rivals, Tottenham. We're never going to get into that realm at Upton Park. We need to move on. We need to start attracting a newer fan base, enabling us to fill a huge stadium. West Ham's a big club like Forest, got a huge following. So we haven't really had a problem with that side of it. But that was the promise, was to get European football. So had they have done the stadium correctly, that definitely would have sold it better. I think it became apparent quite early on that they really did. They went down the cheaper route of everything, really. That that they promised us this really high tech special stadium that had all this. It went to athletics mode, then went back to football mode, and it was going to look amazing. They kind of really pitched this idea to the fans, and I'll be honest, they haven't delivered on it. It's pretty poor. But it has improved. I'm not saying they've left it as it was. Over the years we've been there now, they keep making tweaks here and there and changing it over bits and by bit. Some things that I don't like, some things I do. We're getting there. But yeah, in answer to your question, yes, if they'd have done it properly, I think they'd have had a lot more fans on board. So I do hope that if Forest do go down that route, that they get that right and actually make a football stadium, which I'm assuming they will, because we've just basically taken the cheap option and decided to rent an athletics ground.
This is a general Premier League question. It doesn't necessarily tie into the ground debate, but do you feel like fans, is that even the wrong word now? Do you feel more like a customer as each season goes by, or do you still feel you have that kind of boyhood supporter thing about you?
I do, yeah. I mean, I still feel like a fan, and I haven't really changed so much, really. There are some that are so tied into the past and their history of the club, and I totally get it, especially fans that have been there for a long time, season ticket holders for 20, 30 years, whatever. I can understand it's really difficult to accept any change, and they just feel lost. And it's really sad, because I know some people that have gone through that, and in fact, I know a couple of people that haven't gone to West Ham since we moved. They might go to the away game, they won't go to the home games, they just won't entertain it. Personally, I'm not like that. I'm happy to sort of accept change and sort of go, look, it's still West Ham, it's still my club, and do you know what? Like, if Nottingham Forest are able to, let's just say that this does happen, you get this 50,000 seat stadium, and it enables you to increase your revenue. You can then buy in better players, and you actually start competing for things in the Premier League, i.e., European spots, and who knows, in the future Champions League. I think that's exciting personally as a fan, but I do know what you mean by the word customer, because that's certainly Karen Brady used that word once, actually used it in a press conference and said, well, we've got our customers. And I thought, oh, well, what are you saying? So it's horrible to imagine that's how that. And I think that's how probably they do see us owners, you know, because at the end of the day, they see the spreadsheets, don't they? And we're numbers really at the end of the day. But I'll always be a fan, definitely. 100%. I haven't lost that connection with the club at all.
The last question I was going to ask you, I think you've largely answered it. I mean, it would be, if I gave you a choice to go back to Upton Park, knowing what you know, would you do it? I mean, I think you'd probably stick. How do you think other West Hams would feel? West Ham fans would feel? Would they want to go back to Upton Park or not?
I think it would be a bit of a divide. I don't know what the percentage would be. I'm guessing it'd be around 50-50. There are some fans that desperately want to go back, or they don't like the new stadium, but I think over time that's changing. You know, I think at the beginning when we first moved, I think 80-90% would have said, just get us out of here, let's go back home, and we're absolutely gutted. I probably was one of them, really. I was sitting there thinking, oh, I really, you know, I like the size of the stadium, but I didn't like the certain aspects of it. It didn't feel like home. But I'll tell you what it is as well. I think you create memories, and I think that's what it's all about. So you tie in a lot of your history. You know, like when you move house, for instance, like it can be gut wrenching, but really it's only a house. But because you've had kids there, and you know you got married when you were there, or whatever it may be, you tie into a lot of these memories of where these places are. So I've actually found with time now, I feel more at home because I can remember really good occasions at this stadium now. Like I can remember brilliant European nights, and we've beaten Tottenham there a couple of times now, and we've had some really special moments. So it's almost like it's starting to become, it's creating its own history. So that's what you need to do effectively. You know, just look forward to those nights and those occasions where, that's what you need to do quickly, don't you? You want to say, let's have some really good games here. Let's have some moments where we go, God, that was great. What a great experience. And then I think it starts to happen. But when you first arrive, it is like, you know, you're just like you're renting a new place. You know, you're looking around thinking, what is this? It's weird. But I think it also can be quite exciting. You know, it at least it shows that your ownership have got their hearts in the right place, it seems, you know, in terms of wanting to take the club forward, and they're not just there to drain it effectively.
No, I think that's true. I think that's, as the matchday atmosphere during the match deteriorated significantly, do you think, or not?
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because people talk about, you know, the atmosphere. I mean, definitely Upton Park had a good atmosphere, but also at times not so good, because it depended on the situation. You know, when we were having dire seasons, it wasn't great, and it wasn't very pleasant. And when we were losing, obviously it was quiet. So, and this is, you know, wherever you play. So I sometimes get a bit frustrated when people say, oh, you know, it wasn't like this Upton Park. I thought, well, it was. It was just, you know, you're just thinking of times when we were doing well there. And also at this London Stadium, when we've done well, the atmosphere has been fantastic. But it's definitely different. It depends, I think, where you sit as well, because I sit quite close to the away fans, which is, it feels like an away game, really, because we're all on our feet all the time. But it's certainly not as the same. It's different. But I'd like to hope that if Nottingham Forest do move stadium, they'll at least design it in a way that it tries to keep that atmosphere tight as you can. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because if you're trying to get 50,000 seats, and obviously I haven't seen the design, but I'd like to think they'll get it right, and that will be key to it. But yeah, I do miss sometimes the old atmosphere. It was a little bit more intense.
Thanks, Mark, then, for that insight. Interesting how he sort of come to terms. I don't know if reluctant acceptance is the phrase or not around the London Stadium. It's obviously a different one to the Tottenham Stadium in terms of, I guess, quality of football stadium and matchday experience. So we'll hear about the new Everton ground next in the company of Ped, who was a really good guest when we spoke to him before we faced Everton at Goodison, and this is their penultimate season there before they move to their new site in Bramley-Moore Dock in the heartland of Liverpool itself. So yeah, he's really good on what he makes of that upcoming move and how it relates to the future of his club. And then after that, we'll be back for some final conclusions around how it relates to Forest and any potential move away to the City Ground, especially to Tottenham. So what are your just general thoughts on the move to the Docklands Stadium? Are you upbeat about it, or are you really hating the prospects of leaving Goodison?
Can't wait. Honestly, can't wait. I've been ready for this for 20 years. You'll find other Evertonians who are obviously feeling different, and the thought of moving Goodison Park will break the heart and all that. To me, you've got to move forward. Football leaves behind clubs now who can't move with the times. And when you look at some teams like, you look at like a Sheffield Wednesday, who are in a situation where they can't build a new stadium, can't monetize the stadium they've got now. For me, it's a case of moving with the times and making money, and it's a fresh start.
One of the things that Forest fans would like to see, and the original proposals have always been to redevelop the City Ground to make it a 40,000 capacity, and not the perfect solution, but increase the corporate capacity as much as possible. And obviously, that's not possible with Goodison, I imagine. Is that what you would have wanted in an ideal world, I guess, or not? No,
not really. No, I don't think it's time for shortcuts. I think it's time for doing what has to be done. I think, if you have got room around your ground and you can extend it and you can create the perfect situation, then yeah, by all means do that. But if you can't, then why would you do half measures? Of course, football is all about emotion. We live on emotion. That's what gets a lot of our clubs through as a fan. And your ground is part of that, of course it is, and you can't even bear thinking about leaving it and what that'll mean. But I imagine as soon as we're into our new stadium and we're familiar with it and familiar with the people around us, then that'll be our home. We're the people, aren't we? We're the people in the ground. At the end of the day, we're what makes it special. Go into your ground when it's empty, and you'll see how special it is. It doesn't feel the same. It's the people who make it. So for me, it's not about shortcuts. It's about doing it properly. And for us, that meant getting a new stadium, because Goodison Park couldn't be developed because it's surrounded on three sides by housing that can't really be touched. So I think it's about if you need to have a clean break because you need that perfect scenario, then I think that's the best way forward.
Just tell us a little bit about the new ground. I've seen just a little bit in terms of the 50,000 capacity costing about 500 million. I don't know if it's on budget or not, but the location as well. It looks like a really good location. Are you happy with everything that's been put together?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's about 53,000, which it's a shame it's not more, to be honest. But it can be bigger, but it can only be bigger if they change the regulations on safe standing. So it's going to have two safe standing areas. One is right behind one of the goals, which the hole behind the goal will be rail seating. So the whole thing will be rail seating up to a point, and then then there's a bit of a wall, which you won't see because it's the size literally of someone standing up, and then it goes to normal seating. Then there's a part of the away end. Now, if they change the regulations, the capacity will go up. Whether that ever happens, I don't know. The footprint doesn't really allow for the ground to be extended, so we're stuck with what we've got really in terms of capacity. But the footprint for the ground is because of the location, and the location is absolutely incredible. It's right on the water, on the River Mersey. It was a dock. The dock was filled in. If anyone goes and checks out any of the videos, the dock was filled in with sand, and it was compacted, and the stadium's built on that. So, and it's surrounded by docks as well. It looks incredible. The whole area as well is ready for development. It's just outside the city centre. So you imagine as it opens and it grows, you'll see the city centre grow towards it, and there's a lot of other developments in place that will come when the stadium is open and people start realizing they can make money of it. The city centre will start pushing towards the stadium. So there's nothing there as in stopping that from happening as well. It's old warehouse area, so it's ripe for development. And it's our area as well. No one lives there, so it can become an area that is just all about servicing Everton, and also for like concerts and things like that. So it's gonna be, or it does have the opportunity to be such a fantastic area. that is just catering Everton, and that's what sold it to a lot of people. Was there was another area which is more towards the outskirts of the city, which really, if we'd gone there, the stadium could have been 70,000 and it would have been built by now and it would have come in cheaper. But it's the area that sold it to people, and this very unique design. It's not a off the shelf stadium design either. It's been designed in a way that on the outside makes it look very, very new and modern in parts, but also the brickwork makes it look like it's in keeping with the local area. But the inside is very, very steep. It looks small on the inside because of the steepness of the stands, and it makes it really intimate. And every seat is looks fantastic from what we've seen so far. So we're really happy with it. And as I said, it's not that far from Goodison as well. It's probably about a mile from Goodison Park. So it's everything's just perfect about it, in my opinion, anyway. And it's got so much room to grow that the surrounding area as well. So it's exciting. And the only disappointment is it'll actually be built this year. It'll be built by December, but we're not going to move into it till the following season, which I do find is a strange situation with a club that really needs money not to be moving in. But the club decided they wanted a clean break and give everyone that last one season at Goodison Park, which you can understand from that point of view. Financially, I don't think it makes much sense, but you're going to have a stadium sitting there for about 8 months doing very little.
The big reservation about Forest fans, I think, from listening to him about the proposed new site, is it's 6 miles from the city ground. It's very much out of town. So if Everton had moved that out of town location, but still had the amazing stadium, do you think you'd feel differently or not?
Yeah, I would feel differently, because we've had those, not opportunities as such, but we've had the club try to sell us that before. There was a development about 15 years ago, which was in Kirby, which it is Liverpool, but strict in the terms of boundaries and councils and all those kind of things, it doesn't come under Liverpool. And people thought that the stadium itself was terrible. It looked like Wigan, and it was built basically like it was one of those built within a supermarket, style. It was terrible, and people thought that tooth and nail. And then, as I said, so that was right outside the city. And then the one we were sort of not offered, but it was one of the locations muted, as I said, was towards the outskirts of the city centre as well. And in terms of a stadium, would have been perfect with everything going around it. But we feel like we're a club that, like yourselves, I imagine. I mean, it's even more for us because obviously we're Everton. We're an area of a city, so we're obviously attached to that area. So it has to be sort of, can't be too far away from that. We're not Liverpool. Liverpool could move anywhere in this city and it'd still be Liverpool. But we've got attachments to the north end of the city centre. Of the city. So it has to be somewhere in the north end. And where the new stadium is just north of the city centre. So it's still within that area. And you can, Everton as an area, is where the actual tower on our badge is. You can see the stadium from that area, so it sort of all still plays into the romantic side of things, which as a football fans we all love, don't we? We all play up to that all the time, and I think there's connotations with grounds that are outside the city of what we've seen with the likes of Bolton, which are, like you're saying, they're built within a supermarket area and that kind of thing. I think that when it works, though, it can work. You have to look at the Etihad campus to show that if you get a ground and you've got land around it and you can build and grow something that becomes not just a ground but a whole area that can be yours, then maybe it can work. I mean, I can't sit here and say it either way. It could, if you've got more than just a ground, it could just be that whole area could be yours. And I think there's something special about that as well. And what City have done obviously is unbelievable with the Etihad campus, and ours is very, very much just a standalone. I mean, it's got such a big fan plaza and stuff like that around it, but the ground itself will still feel very intimate, and I think people going there will feel that it's got a similar style to Goodison because it's not got all these different things attached to it and it isn't part of a humongous campus and stuff like that. So I suppose it depends what they're trying to sell to you as the whole package.
Last question I want to ask you, Pad. I think it's particularly relevant to Everton with the finances of your club and the finances of football and PSR. Do you feel ever more like a customer more than a fan?
See, it's really difficult to answer that because I'll be honest, we know nothing still. The stadium is there, it's getting built. We know nothing at this stage about what the prices are going to be. The prices in the last 3 years at Goodison have steadily grown, almost like they didn't want a shock. They didn't want this, like, everyone to have this big shock when you first got told how much the season tickets were going to be. So it's just gone up gradually, and I imagine it's probably gone up by 5% and then 6% and 7%, so that when we do move, it'll be probably 10% of what we were paying 3 years ago, or even more, I imagine. So it's hard to gauge that yet. How they've sold it to us, though, hasn't necessarily felt like that. How they sold us it is been really well done. I must admit, the club have got this absolutely spot on. I've been very critical of the club over the last few years for the way they've handled things, but the way they've done the stadium has been really, really well done. They have ticked every box. They've not left anything to chance. Everton have had to jump through a lot of hurdles to get this stadium in terms of the city itself actually lost its World Heritage status. I mean, that's a massive thing. And the city were prepared to lose that for Everton to build a ground. And Everton knew they had to jump through a lot of hurdles, Heritage England and all these things, to try and make it so it didn't go to government. It did go to government, but it was looked at for literally 5 minutes. Everyone knew it was a good thing for the city. But Everton, even the design has changed a few times. The size of the stadium, it's not huge. So it doesn't block out other areas behind it. We've had to jump through a lot of hoops, as I said, and the club itself have made sure that every stage it's done consultation, so that when it did go and get planning permission, they could say nobody is upset with this. Nobody. And of course, when it was getting built, you did hear a few Liverpool fans, not Everton fans, Liverpool fans coming out going, "Oh, this is terrible." Trying to make it seem like they were appalled that for us, "Oh, this will rip the soul out of Everton," and all this. And it was like Everton fans were just I think it was something like 96% wanted to go, because it was sold so well by the football club. Obviously, how they've paid for it is crazy. It's because of COVID and because of the war in Ukraine, they never secured funding for this stadium. They literally started the stadium without funding. So we don't have a situation like Spurs have, where it's paid over 30, 40 years. It's basically got paid for by the owner and short-term debt, which has got Everton where it is. Short-term debt with high interest rates, which is not a good place to be. And when anyone says, "Well, Everton have got a huge debt," it's because of the stadium, because they started it and it was the owner was "Well, it's 20 million, it's 50 million, it's 100 million. And that should never have been allowed to happen. And I don't think will ever happen with another football club, because it's a really stupid thing to do. But it's nearly done. We're all in now, and I think a lot of people are really, really excited. We go into our last season at Goodison Park. It will be in the Premier League. Forest will be visiting Goodison Park next season for the last time. You'll get a chance to experience it as well. And they're saying every game's going to be some new different thing for the last season at Goodison. So it's all very exciting. It really is now. It's that thing of I don't know if anyone's expecting, when you finish work and you leave into a new job and all that kind of thing, you're just enjoying it. We're going to enjoy that last season at Goodison, and with that big shiny exciting thing ready to come for the following season, and with it all the hopes and new dreams that come with it.
Hey, great stuff from Ped. It's interesting to hear how enthusiastic he is about moving. I thought there might be some kind of reticence to leave Goodison, but clearly not. And I think it is interesting that all three of the fans we spoke to either like or accept the move ultimately, which I guess is what you would do as a Forest fan. If it happens, I don't think people would stop going. It would change what the club is mostly. When you hear Baker talking about that matchday experience and the different atmosphere, the different kind of fan that perhaps goes to the game, what you gain and what you lose, there's a big trade-off, financial for the football club and for, that match day experience, which isn't just watching the game. It's the walk to the ground, what you do beforehand, what you do after. Obviously Spurs, it sounds like to me, have just nailed it in terms of the facility, and it's an all-day event there. They must be absolutely coining it in. I think they took out £1 billion loan, Temps was saying, but in terms of, I've got to stop saying in terms, because of the NFL, the Beyonce concert, everything around it, it feels like they're going to pay that off pretty quickly. London Stadium's really different, I'd say. I've been to it, and I dropped this in our WhatsApp group this evening. It feels a bit dated already. It's only, less than 15 years old. And I know you have to move with the times, but stadiums age quickly. We've seen that with City Ground. Obviously, it's well past its prime, but it has its charm, and it feels like the London Stadium's already losing that charm, if it had any. It's not a great place to watch football, but it has brought the club forwards. Listening to Mark when he's talking about how they sold it as we'll get into Europe. Well, they've won that European trophy, so I guess it's done what they said. But I don't like it as a ground, and I would hate it if Forest were to move and they were to mess it up and produce something like that. Obviously, it wouldn't be like an athletic stadium, but when you hear what Ped says around the Everton Stadium being so exciting, it sounds like they're turning out something really good for the fans. And the other key facet is around location. Spurs Stadium is on the existing site. The West Ham Stadium, I don't know how far it is from Upton Park, actually. It's not in a great location. The Olympic Park's fantastic as a legacy for the country, but it doesn't feel like a football ground particularly. The new Everton ground's in a great spot in the city, on the Dockland. It's got that waterfront, which obviously we love, but Tottenham is a different kettle of fish. It's so far out of the area for Forest, for the fans. I know Ped spoke about, the Etihad complex and how great that would be. And it would, but it doesn't feel like the optimum solution for me. I mean, I think for me, the best solution, and I said this on the podcast on Monday, today as I record this, to be honest, the best solution for me is you redevelop the City Ground, you make it 40,000 plus capacity, you have the new corporate facilities, you retain the best of both worlds as much as you can. And then, if there's this fantastic land at Tottenham on the edge of HS2, well, it feels right for a new training ground. That would be a win for the county council, a win for the city council, a win for Forest, I think, and a win for Evangelos Marinakis in terms of a legacy. How great would it be to have a Premier League club competing year in, year out, being stable, having this elite training facility to bring through the next generation of talent, to attract new signings. Nottingham is always fighting against London. I know 2 of the clubs we spoke to are in London, and you've got to maximise everything you can. And I think you can. This is a great way to do it. Obviously, a new stadium, if it's all singing, all dancing, will do that to an extent. But I just feel like the trade-off is so big that even listening to those chaps, it's not for me. If it does happen, I think we'll come to accept it, but it would leave a bitter taste in the mouth. And, that would be a very different part of a legacy for Evangelos Marinakis. The club will still be here when he's gone, when we're all gone, and you want to leave it in the best state you can, in the best regard you can. And to me, the redeveloped City Ground, the new training ground, is the best way. I'm not totally against the new stadium move. A location's such a big thing. Tottenham doesn't feel right to me. If there's land in Nottingham that retains that kind of football club in the heart of the city, and if that can be worked out, then fair enough. But with the freehold available for 10 million, the phrase no-brainer has been used a lot, hasn't it? But I think it does feel like a no-brainer to me. I can't really get away from it. It feels like a really good solution. It feels economically fair. Not that I'm an expert in any of this, but I do really hope it happens. Hopefully people can, bang some heads together, get it all sorted, and we can move forward, because it feels like the football club is on the brink of being exactly where we want it. I think the next few years are going to be really tricky on the pitch. We're not an established Premier League club. We finished 17th this season, so we've obviously got lots of work to do. And we discussed that with Fletch, Greg, and Temps earlier around what they need. But we've got so much work to do to get to where we want to be as a club. And if we can get this freehold sorted, get cracking on with the City Ground redevelopment, then I think we'll be in a really good place in 5 to 10 years' time. So hopefully people found that interesting anyway. It's good to get different perspectives on these things. I didn't know what any of the three gents were going to say. And it was interesting to hear they were all perhaps more optimistic than expected. So yeah, good stuff from them. Grateful for their time. As ever, if you've enjoyed this, do me a favor, hit like on this. Do consider subscribing, and you can become a channel member and give us a lovely review. Back tomorrow with Henry Winter. Spoke to him earlier. Some really interesting stuff there. And then we'll turn our attention to the Burnley game, and I'll have more details around our next live show, which is coming up soon. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, have a good day, and we shall see you soon.